The docking klaxon on Threshold Station hadn't finished its third cycle when the crowd in Concourse 9 began to part. Not shuffle, not step aside politely. Part, the way water parts around a falling stone, the way a herd scatters when the grass moves wrong. Ben noticed it first because he was the one being left behind in the gap. He said, adjusting the strap of his duffel bag on his shoulder. Why is everyone suddenly very interested in the far wall? Beside him, Lily didn't answer right away. She was still getting her bearings after 11 months in cryo-transit, blinking under the two bright lights of the station concourse, boots unsteady on the deck plating. She was 5'4", sunburned across the nose from the last planet-side assignment, hair scraped back into a practical braid, and entirely unaware that roughly 400 sapient beings from 9 different species had just collectively decided she was the most dangerous thing in the room. A Tavrisi traitor, 6 limbs, chitinous plating, the kind of creature that could bench press a ground car, backed into a support pillar trying to put distance between himself and Lily's flight path. His mandibles clicked in a rapid, anxious pattern that the station's translation implants rendered as a stammer. Ma'am, please, the walkway is entirely yours. I'm not even walking toward you, Lily said, baffled. No, the Tavrisi agreed, still backing up. No, you are not. Ben watched a pair of Ketrii, soft-furred, huge-eyed herbivorous diplomats who moved in tight defensive clusters out of ancestral instinct, physically climb over a luggage cart to avoid crossing Lily's shadow. Their translator drones buzzed out apologies in 3 languages at once. Okay, Ben said slowly. This is the part where I ask if you did something during transit that you didn't tell me about. I was asleep, Ben. Right? Right, of course. They found out why over the next 6 hours, in pieces, the way you find out you've been standing on a fault line, not from any one dramatic revelation, but from a slow accumulation of small, telling details. The first piece came from the station's threat assessment algorithm, which every docking vessel and its crew got run through as a formality. Ben had seen 1,000 of these readouts in his career as a survey logistics officer. Green bars, yellow bars, occasionally, for people carrying weapons or restricted tech. Lily's readout was a single, pulsing band of solid red, and beneath it, in small clinical font, classification, Apex baseline, handle with extreme deference. That has to be a glitch, Lily said, staring at it in the customs office. The customs officer, a faint KL with pale luminous skin and pupil-less eyes built for detecting motion in low light, was very carefully not looking directly at her. It is not a glitch, the officer said. We have seen this readout before. Twice. Both times it was attached to your species. What does that even mean, both times? There's only, a few 100,000 humans who've ever left the solar system. Yes, the officer agreed, with the specific patience of someone explaining a very obvious thing to someone who did not yet understand how obvious it was. And in both prior instances, the individual in question ranked in the terrestrial ecological registry as what your species calls, colloquially, a person who runs marathons for fun. Lily opened her mouth, closed it. I ran a marathon 2 months before I shipped out, she said quietly. We know, said the officer. It's in your file. The second piece came from a bar. Ben had suggested it. Something to unwind after the paperwork. Something normal, the kind of low-stakes evening they'd promised each other back when they signed onto this joint survey contract. The bar was called the Long Dark, tucked into the station's spin-gravity ring, patronized mostly by freight crews and off-duty station staff. It emptied within 4 minutes of Lily walking in. Not entirely. A few patrons stayed, mostly other humans, unbothered, sipping their drinks with the specific amusement of people who'd seen this particular show before. But the non-human clientele, easily 24 of them, filed out in an orderly, hurried, deeply polite retreat, several of them murmuring apologies to Lily on their way past, as though they were the ones being rude. I didn't do anything, Lily said to Ben, for what felt like the 40th time that day. I ordered a beer. You ordered a beer very calmly, said a voice from the bar. It belonged to a human, older, gray at the temples, wearing a station engineer's jumpsuit and grinning like he was enjoying a private joke. That's the thing. You didn't even notice you were doing it. Doing what? The engineer, his name tag read Warwick, gestured with his glass at the empty stools around her. You walked in here, you scanned every exit in about half a second without breaking stride. You picked the seat with your back to the wall and full sight line to the door, and you did all of it without thinking, like breathing. Every predator species on this station learned to read body language from apex hunters a long time before they ever got to space. And you just walked in here reading like the top of every food chain they've ever met, all at once, and didn't even clock that you were doing it. Lily blinked. I was in the army for 6 years before I went into survey work. That's just how you sit in a room. Yeah, Warwick said, delighted. Exactly. The third piece, the one that finally made it click for Ben, came 2 days later on the observation deck, watching the slow wheel of stars through the reinforced viewport. They'd been assigned, almost as a courtesy, almost as an apology, their own private section of the deck, cordoned off for the humans' comfort, though Ben suspected it was really for everyone else's. Lily stood at the rail, arms crossed, looking unusually thoughtful for someone who spent most of her waking hours being relentlessly practical. I looked it up, she said finally. The classification thing. It's not really about strength. Half these species could crush me without trying. The Tavrisi bench pressed a shuttle door last week for fun. So what is it about? Behavioral pattern recognition, mostly. Something about, she made a vague gesture, the stillness. Most predator species, even the smart ones, they've got tells. Ears go back. Muscles bunch. Something in the posture that broadcasts I am about to do violence half a second before they do it, because evolution never optimized them to hide that from prey that could also read body language. Humans don't do that. Not the ones who've actually been through something. We learn to go quiet before we act, not loud. No tell. No wind up. 1 second you're calm. The next second the threat's just handled. And apparently that specific kind of calm before anything happens is the single most bone-deep terrifying thing in the galaxy to any species that ever had to survive by watching for the wind-up. Ben thought about it. Thought about 6 years in survey work with Lily at his side. Thought about the 2 separate occasions where something had gone very wrong on a hostile planetary survey, and how both times Lily hadn't shouted or postured. She'd simply gone quiet, gone still, and then the problem had stopped being a problem, usually before Ben had fully registered what she was doing. You're not even trying to be scary, he said. That's the part that's funny. You're just being you. I brought you a granola bar earlier because you looked tired, Lily said, mildly offended. I am not scary. 400 aliens at customs would disagree. 400 aliens have never seen me try to assemble station furniture. Ben laughed, really laughed, the first real laugh since they'd docked, and Lily's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile, but was trying to be one, and out past the viewport the stars wheeled on, indifferent, while somewhere behind them on the observation deck, a Ketri diplomat peered cautiously around a support column, confirmed that the apex predator was, in fact, only eating a granola bar and not currently hunting anyone, and slowly, carefully, allowed himself to relax. It would take the station's non-human population approximately 3 more weeks to fully accept that Lily was not, in fact, perpetually one provocation away from violence, that the stillness was just how she stood, the quiet was just how she thought, and the terrifying, ancient predator calm radiating off her at all times was, from the inside, mostly just a woman trying to remember if she'd left the stove on back at the last station. But word had already started to spread through the docking network, ship to ship, species to species, the way these things always did. There's a human on Threshold Station, the message went, and when the room clears for her, you clear too, and you don't ask why. You just clear it fast. Ben thought that was, all things considered, a pretty good way to describe his best friend.